Hi, welcome to Actual. I'm John Purkis. Today I'm doing my top 20 board games of 2017. I must have played over 100 board games last year and these are my favourites. I'm also doing a top 10 party games list separately because I find it hard to compare board games and party games, and it's been a great year for party games. First I want to special mention to a few games that are not on this list. That is Kokoro Avenue of the Kodama, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, the Jack the Ripper cases, and Sheep and Thief. These are all games that I fell in love with way before 2017, but they all got fancy reprints or expansions this year, and they would all deserve to be on the list, otherwise they're all amazing games. I've put links to all the games that I've mentioned in the description below. Thank you to my Patreon backers for your support this last year. I wouldn't be able to do it without you. If you'd like to pledge to help Actual grow bigger and better, go to patreon.com/Actual. Let's get on with the list. And number 20 is Mask of Moai. And this is a virtual reality game from Japan. It uses a mobile phone app that you put into like a headset that's just made out of cardboard. And then one person, you take it in turns to kind of be looking in this world, this virtual reality world, and then communicating to your teammates, because you're playing cooperatively, about this temple that you're in. And they have got all these tile pieces and they're trying to create the map. And so it has just this wonderful communication aspect. It's almost like a team building exercise. And what I love about it is just different. It provides something. I've got hundreds of games in my collection and this one is completely different. It's also taken the Mask of Anubis game and just improved it slightly, made it a bit clearer on how it works, made it a little bit simpler, but then given you ways to make it more difficult as you get better at the game. It's quirky and it's different. It's by no means the perfect example of something like this. I feel like in 20 years, there will be so many better board games with virtual reality, but right now it's the best one that's out there, and it's so different to anything else that I still really love playing it, and that's Mask of Moai. And number 19 is Indian Summer, and this is from designer Uwe Rosenberg, and it's another one of his polyomino Tetris style games, much like Patchwork or Cottage Garden, where you're placing these funny shapes and you're puzzling it out, you're trying to complete your grid. And that's one thing I love about Indian Summer, is that you've just got one map and you're trying to fill this forest floor and you're racing to the finish. So unlike Patchwork or Cottage Garden, where you're trying to get the most points, and in Cottage Garden you were trying to create lots of small flower beds. I love that this is just one grid, you're racing to it, but that the game has so much thinkiness to it, where you've got a hole in each of the pieces, and where you put those holes is crucial, because you're trying to reveal fruits from underneath. So you have berries and nuts and mushrooms and feathers, and you collect those and they give you special abilities, and it's about when you use those to your advantage. So often multiple players will finish the game at the same time, but it's about how efficiently they've done it, and the tiebreaker is how many of those fruits that you have left. It plays really quickly, and I find that it doesn't have as much downtime as Cottage Garden, because you've got a lot of your pieces in front of you. You can kind of be planning your turn, and so turns can really whip round. It has a beautiful look to it, and it's still simple. You know, it has some thought, but it's still really easy to teach and get into. So I really, really like this one. The only slight niggle is that it's just, the box is too big. So this one completely eclipses Cottage Garden for me. Really pleased with Indian Summer. And number 18 is Catch the Moon. This is a dexterity game that I already talked about in my Now Playing series. It's got a wonderful look on the table. You're building a structure of these wooden ladders and you're trying to catch the moon. On your turn, you roll a dice and it tells you, when you're placing your ladder, how many other ladders it can touch. So if it's only touching one, you sort of have to hang it off delicately. If it's touching two, it's a bit easier, but can only touch two. And if it has to catch the moon, you have to place it so it's the highest point in the whole structure, which is really hard. And I love that the structure will sort of move, but things generally won't completely collapse. And it has a really good rule system to it, where it really feels like the best player won, rather than something like Rhino Hero, where there's a fair amount of luck involved. It looks great on the table, plays quickly. I love everything about it, really. That's Catch the Moon. And number 17 is Divinity Derby. This is a racing/betting game that I picked up at Essen, and this has got a really unique feel to it, because you are betting on these animals in this race. You might say that this one's going to come first, or this one's going to come last, or second to last. and then you move them by playing cards, but you share your hand of cards half with the player on your left and half with the player on your right, so you can see the cards that they will be able to play, and you can see which animals they've bet on, but you don't know which bets they've placed. Have they placed a bet on that animal to come first or last or in the middle? And so you're trying to learn about things from other players. You're also bluffing a bit, and it's just really interesting the choices that you make, because one of your cards you play the top number, the higher number, and that animal races ahead. Another of the cards from the other rack, you have to play the lower number. And so you might be stitching up your neighbor because they really wanted that card to get them further ahead, and now that's really going to hamper that animal. It's got such a completely different style to any racing or betting game that I've got, and yet it's still just really simple. The rules are really simple. There's also some special abilities that you can throw in. It's got some nice miniatures. I think the theme is a little bit dull, but it's really about the gameplay, and I think it's just different and it's fun. That's Divinity Derby. And number 16 is Fugitive, and this is a 2-player game that I already talked about in my Couples That Play Together video, so if you want to see a full review of that, please go and check that out. And this is a 2-player deduction game, so one person is the fugitive, they're trying to escape from jumping to hideout, these are just numbered cards, and the marshal, the other player, is trying to catch them. So they are learning more and more about where they could be, they're crossing things off on their notepad, and they're trying to deduce where they are and catch them before they escape. It has such a completely different feel from any other 2-player game that I have, and that's just, I can't really believe that he created such an interesting game from just a deck of numbered cards, really. And this is from my favorite designer, Tim Fowers. It's got wonderful artwork, a nice theme. It comes in a tiny little box, so if you ever just want a completely unique 2-player game, then Fugitive is the one to go for. And number 15 is Sagrada. This is a dice drafting game about creating stained glass windows. So you've got this grid in front of you that needs dice put in it, and you've got certain demands. It will need certain colors or numbers in certain places. A bunch of colored dice are rolled, and you have to take it in turns to choose one that you want and then place it. And there are certain placement rules. You can't place the same color or number next to each other. You have to place adjacent to dice that you've already placed. So it has a really great thinky puzzle vibe to it. It's not so annoying that it drives you crazy, but it's got that right level of frustration. And this is almost a gateway level game. The rules are really simple. It's just easy for anyone to get into. It's not mean in any way. And it plays nice and quickly. It looks amazing on the table with those colored dice. It plays great with 2, 3, or 4 players. It's not going to be my favorite game ever, but it fits that category of a game that just does everything it's trying to do right. And it's that great level of about 45 minutes that you can play with almost anyone. That's Sagrada. And number 14 is Viral. This is an area control game where you all play as viruses trying to attack one unlucky human's body. So the board is their vital organs, and you're placing your viruses down and moving them around, and you're trying to win regions. So you might be trying to get points for having the most of your virus in the lungs. And you do that by playing cards. It's quite a nice, simple system, but what I love about the game is it's got a real thematic flavor, that there are certain aspects to it that make thematic sense, and that really engages me with the game. So, for example, when you move around the body, you can only follow the arteries or the veins, so you can't go backwards up an artery. And I learned, whilst playing the game, I was playing with a doctor, and I learned about the blood-brain barrier and how that works, and that's kind of displayed in the game. And there's a couple of other things, like if you put too much of your virus in this guy's body, then the researchers that are working on him will kind of wipe you out. So, and then everything gets wiped off the board, which is really annoying. You can also create a crisis in a region, and that's where his immune system will kind of fight back and everyone gets kicked out, but you do score points for it. It's got a really nice, simple system where you're playing action cards that allow you to place viruses, attack other viruses, move around, but then you pair those up with organ cards. So you might say, I want to attack in the kidneys. Next round, you can't use the kidneys again. So if you're trying to control that region, you have to come up with creative ways about how you can get your viruses there or protect them so that you don't get ousted. And so there's a lot of interesting thought to it, and yet it's a really simple card system. And yeah, the only thing that I don't love about it is just it's a bit too long. It's taken us about 2 hours a game. But I think it's a nice quirky theme, and it's an area control game that I've really enjoyed. That's viral. And number 13 is La Cosa Nostra. This is a game that first came out in German a few years ago and was out for the first time in English this year. I backed it on Kickstarter. And this is a crime negotiation game. You play as mafia bosses. And one of the first things I like about it is that it takes the theme seriously. This is dark adult theme. You are selling drugs and doing terrible things, but that's what mafia people do, and that's how TV and film would treat it. So I appreciate that. It's a really rich negotiation game, and what's great about it is it's quite a simple system. You have these job cards that you can complete each round. You're trying to get the most money. So you might do some things that just get you money. You might sell some drugs in your nightclub. Or you might try and hold up another one of the players. You might go and attack them, do something to them. If you do that, you have to say who you're targeting before you flip the card. So you could be bluffing to everyone about what the card is, extorting money from them to try and you know, say, oh, I won't attack you if you give me some money. But you have to say who you're targeting just before you reveal it. So there's so much potential for negotiation. You can also share buildings, so if somebody else needs to sell drugs, they can come and use my nightclub, but of course I'm gonna want some money for that. It's one of those perfect negotiation games where money is flying around all the time, and that's what I love in those things, that you spend most of the game just talking with each other, and actually the simple things of what you do, you only maybe play 4 rounds, and yet the game still lasts 2 or 3 hours. So I love the theme, and I love the system. It's quite different to other negotiation games that I have. Of course, negotiation games tend to be long, so I don't play them as often as I like, and some people can really dislike them, but I really love La Cosa Nostra. And number 12 is 878 Vikings Invasion of England, and this is from Academy Games in their line of light approachable war games such as 1812 Invasion of Canada and 1775 Rebellion. And all of those games are quite similar because you play in teams. So in Vikings, it's 2v2. And the system is really simple. You have a bunch of cards, some are special events, but most of them are movement cards which tell you how many armies you can move and how far you can move them this turn. And then you move them, get into fights, and then you're rolling your dice to resolve combat. But there's more to it than meets the eye. It's not shallow as it seems in terms of tactics and strategy, because my dice might be stronger than my teammates, except they have more dice. You can only roll those amount of dice, even if you've got 20 men in your fight. So it's about deciding how thinly to spread yourself. Defenders get to roll first. I like that there's thought to it, but it's not overcomplicated in rules, because I don't play many war games. I've basically got Memoir 44 and 1812, and that's it. But I love the idea of a war game, and I love the theme of it, and I especially love the team aspect to these types of games. But more old school war games, I've played once or twice, and I just find them way too complicated. There's way too much to think about, and it's just not for me. I love the level of this one, and that there's still a lot involved. I was kind of destined to like this one because I like the system, and they proved me right, really. I like that it's improved with these little tiny miniatures instead of cubes. I've got the big play mat, which looks great on the table. And it has a different feel because these Vikings come over in big hordes, and the English are spread thin, and they really just have to defend. They can't attack as well. And so it's got a nice thematic vibe to it. That's 878 Vikings Invasion of England. At number 11 is MS Batory, and this is a Cluedo-type deduction game that came out at Essen. It's from one of my favourite designers, Philip Malunsky, who did Capital and CV. And what I really like about this is that it's just a great, approachable deduction crime game. I've always wanted a replacement to Cluedo, and in my opinion, this is completely it. I've played Mystery of the Abbey, I've played Sleuth, which is a great game, and I've played other ones, and this one has hit the spot the most for me. I love the theme of it. You're all on a cruise ship. It's a jewel robbery and you have to catch the thief. I love crime themes in general, to be honest. And you've got the bit of paper, just like in all those other games, where you're having to mark off the information that you know. You start off with some of the characters. Everyone else has the other characters. And they all have different characteristics. So are they staff or a passenger, their gender and their age. And you are learning things by asking questions of the other players in the game. It comes with an incredible 3D cruise ship board, which is really nice. It's a little bit unnecessary for the gameplay, but I think it totally works. I think it really brings the game alive, and I really enjoy it. And it's a little bit tricky to set up each time, which is a shame, but so you're moving the characters around this ship, and then you're asking questions of the other players to try and get information. But you can only ask questions with that apply to cards that you might have in your hand. So I could only ask someone how many women they have if I have a card with gender on it, and then I play that card. And so I like that that limits what you can ask. It's the only real limiter in the game in that respect, but it works really simply. It's a really simple, clever system. You don't overthink it. It almost targets you, because in something like Mystery of the Abbey, I always have AP in terms of what question I could ask, because I could ask so many different things. And in this, it's like, well, if I've only got these two cards, I can only ask questions about those things, which is more useful to me. And that's nice. You can ask about the location they are in the ships and the different level that they're on. And I've found it just really enjoyable. Some of those other deduction games I find go on really long and people really struggle to get the answer. And MS Batory I've found to be the right level, but with just enough trickiness to it. For example, they've got these parrots that are sat on the shoulders of another character, and they're also two of them, so they're male and female, and they just kind of confuse things a little bit. But it's such a streamlined system that if you ever interested in a family deduction game, then this is the one I'd recommend. And I really hope that it's made available in the UK and in America, because so far I'm not sure it is. That's MS Batory. And number 10 is Dice Forge, and this is a game that I've done a complete review of, so please go and check that out on the channel if you want to know more about this game. This is a dice crafting game. So you start off with these Lego dice, and you're rolling them, you get resources such as gold and things, and then you spend those to improve your dice. So you clip off the faces of your dice and you put better ones on. And so then when you roll your dice in the future, hopefully you get those much better rewards. And so you build up, and then ultimately you're trying to get the most points. It's a game with not a great theme, although it has a really nice look to it. It's all about that dice crafting system. And it's inspired really by deck building, but I prefer it to deck building because it's a lot more immediate and more exciting. And it's also a kind of simpler, more gateway game. It has a really nice tactile feel to it. And it just does something completely different to any game that I played, and it does it in a really nice way. I'm really hoping they do expansions for this. And it's a really nice production on top of all of that. That's Dice Forge. And number 9 is Santorini. This is a game that I talked about in my Couples That Play Together video. This is an abstract game that looks amazing on the table. It has these 3D plastic pieces, and you're building these buildings that end up looking like the Greek island of Santorini, which is a really beautiful sight. And you are trying to get one of your guys to the top of a tower, and you're trying to not let the other player or other players get to the top of a tower, but you don't own anything on the board, so you're building it collaboratively, but you're trying to not let them get out of your sight so that you can't ever stop them. What makes the game really interesting is that you both have god powers, and they are different each game, and there's so many in the game, and they give you a really strong special ability, either a way maybe to win the game quicker, or a way to build quicker or move quicker. And so you really have to think differently every time you play it about how their god power is going to relate to yours. How you have to suddenly visualize the game differently every time, because they will be closer to winning in different ways than they were in the last game that you played. It plays nice and quickly, it just looks incredible, and it has so much replayability and is really thinky. I highly recommend Santorini. And number 8 are the Exit the Game series from Marcus and Inca brand, and these are escape rooms in a box. I love escape rooms, I've done loads of them, and I don't think a board game is ever going to completely replace the spatial element of them, but what I love about doing an escape room is all the puzzles, working together with your friends, and working against a timer. And I found that the Exit games just are the best ones so far. I've tried the Unlock series as well, which I also really like and would recommend, but these ones I much prefer. I love that they are a one-use only game, that you have to sometimes do things with the components that mean that no one can ever play the game again. I love that they come in a tiny little box, but they pack so much into it. And I just think that the puzzles have been designed at the right level, that you feel like you could always get them if you spend long enough, but they are still really, really hard. And if you do want to get clues, I like that they have like a different level of clue for each one. I've had a great time with this. I honestly feel that playing these escape room games are some of the best time that I've had with board games. But the fact that you can only play them once means that I'm never going to put it at like my #1 of the year, because I've really only played them twice this year. I played the Abandoned Cabin and the Secret Lab, and I had an absolute blast with both of them, and I can't wait to play the new ones that have come out in the series. I would highly recommend Exit the game to almost anyone. I think that I love that they're a new wave of board games that are out there, and I think they're going to do a great job of bringing more people into the hobby as well. And number 7 is Kitchen Rush, and I've done a full review of this, so please check it out on the channel if you want to learn more. This is a real-time cooperative game about running a restaurant. If you've ever played the video game Overcooked, then this is quite similar to that. And I love the frenetic nature of this game, where you're placing sand timers as your workers to do actions. And you can't move them again until the sand time is done, so you're waiting for it to finish. And you are getting in the way of everyone else. Hands are all over the shop, knocking things over. And it has a great thematic feel to this game. Everything makes sense in what you're doing. It was completely unlike any real-time cooperative game that I'd played when I first played it, and I was really, really impressed by it. I still am, and I would highly recommend it to anyone that likes real-time cooperative games. I think it's an absolute blast, and I'll be playing it for years to come. That's Kitchen Rush. And number 6 is This War of Mine. This is based on a video game of the same name, and it has a really dark adult theme of trying to survive the horrors of a war. So you are in this derelict house, you have some survivors, and they are just trying to get by. They're trying to eat food, drink water, keep warm, and survive as the war goes on around them. And first of all, I love any game that tries to tackle interesting adult themes and do it well, and This War of Mine does it incredibly well. I played the video game and liked it, but it's still a video game, and I prefer the board game because of the stories it tells, and it has this really thick storybook in it. So in the nighttime, you have to go out and scavenge, and you're going to face other people. You're going to go into other people's houses. Maybe you're going to steal from them, or you're going to encounter soldiers, or you're going to encounter much nastier people than you, maybe trying to kill you or steal from you. And the way they tell those stories, it's so well written. And then the game around that is a nice cooperative game where you're having to make decisions, you are collecting resources, and you are trying to build up, improve the standing that you have. So if you collect electrical parts, maybe you can build that cooker, which means that the food that you get is going to go further, you're going to survive for longer. It's incredibly hard. I haven't won the game. You're generally going to die. There are probably people that have issues with this game, and I can kind of understand the issues they might have. One of them is that you don't own a character. If you're working cooperatively in a group, then you are just making decisions really as a group, but you kind of just take it in turns to make a decision. I've never really played a cooperative game like that before. And I understand why they've done it, to make it seem like the video game, and perhaps just because it wouldn't work any other way, because you need those characters to possibly die, and then, well, you'd be out of the game, and that would be rubbish. I think it works, and I've enjoyed it, and we've had loads of discussion, and I think ultimately it didn't create too much of a problem, but I imagine it could be a problem with people that like to really heavily quarterback games. I think that some people would just describe it as a solo game played by more people. And I might kind of agree with that. And I think that Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective is kind of like that. But honestly, that doesn't bother me at all, because I play games to play with other people. And I'm sharing this story with other people. I have no interest in playing This War of Mine on my own. It's about being there, discussing with other people. And Some people will find the theme too dark and they wouldn't want to go near anything like this. And I totally understand that as well. And yet, it's hard to describe playing the game as having fun, but yeah, I would describe it as having fun. I don't think that life is all about just playing themes that are sweetness and roses. It's sometimes about seeing the lighter side of dark things, and it's wrong in life to kind of avoid serious subjects just because they're kind of too serious for you. It's hard to describe why it works for me in that level, because, but it just does. I think it does. I think if we talk about board games being art, I think that all board games are art, but this is a real kind of work of art where there's been so much love put into it, and in so many ways it completely delivers. It's also so unique and unlike anything I've ever got. It's not the kind of game that I would want to play once a month, but I'm so glad that I have it in my collection. I'm so glad that there are people out there willing to make games like this, that they're willing to take that chance on Kickstarter, and that there are a lot of people that are supportive of that. That is one of the themes of games for me this year, is that I'm really excited about the direction that it's going in, and this War of Mine is a perfect example of that, and yeah, I'm just really pleased to have it in my collection. And number 5 is Fog of Love. This is a game that I've been waiting for something like 2 years. I've been so excited about it since I first heard about it, because it's a romantic comedy in a board game. It's a 2-player game where you play out a relationship. And so you have a character that the game helps you build with their job and some traits that they have and the way they look. And so does the person that you're playing with, and they are in a relationship. And you are trying to end up satisfied in that relationship somehow. It doesn't always end with them staying together, and that isn't always how you might win the game. And what drew me to this game is the fact that it tells interesting stories, that it plays on a theme that I absolutely love, that it's talking about humanity and people, and just like this War of Mine is being really challenging to board games. And so it's interesting that those games are right next to each other in the list, because Fog of Love absolutely delivers on what it was trying to achieve. It tells fascinating stories about relationships. It's a game unlike any other board game. You know, this War of Mine is quite inspired by other cooperative games, really, and you're collecting resources and you're trying to survive, like Robinson Crusoe or something. Fog of Love is so different to anything out there that I would absolutely recommend that every single person tries it at least once. It might not be for you ultimately. I think it has the potential. It's such an interesting particular type of game that I'm not sure everyone will like it, and yet I've seen so many reviews where people do love it. And I think it has to be praised for being so innovative and doing something different. It isn't the top of this list for me because it isn't necessarily my perfect game of all time, and a couple of reasons for that is, one, because it's a long 2-player game, and I just don't tend to play. I play 2-player games only with my girlfriend. We don't tend to play long games. And also, because of the sort of demands of the role-playing and stuff, it hasn't always worked for my girlfriend as much as it works for me. And so I feel like for some people it will be amazing, people that love to role-play, and that isn't necessarily us. But what I love is that it tells a story. I would say that the other thing is that I think almost no 2-player game would be my favorite game of all time, because I love social experiences. I love games that play with 4 and 6 and 8 players, and that's why I play board games. What's so interesting about this is the way that you can win the game, is that it isn't just about victory points, or it isn't just about having a hidden objective. You do have some hidden objectives, but then there are these destiny cards, and you can almost change your winning objective throughout the game. So you might end sort of like that you completely trust each other, or you might end that you're kind of the weaker person in the relationship, but you're quite okay with that, and that they have way more satisfaction than you do, but that's kind of the decision that you've made for your future. Or you might break up entirely. You might dump them, and there's just so much to it. And then these traits that you have, let's say that I'm shy, or that I'm temperamental. The decisions that I make in every single scene of this game, so it would be something like, I'm going to IKEA, and we're going to IKEA, how do you react to that experience? Or you're buying them a gift, what do you buy them, and what do they want? And every scene, you make decisions, and do you align? If you align, then you're going to get more satisfaction in your relationship. But you're going against who you are, possibly. So if I know, I can kind of sense that my partner likes big grand displays of affection, but I'm shy. This is one of my hidden traits. And I make a decision to kind of please them and mean that we match up. So the relationship does well there, but my personal, who I am, I'm betraying who I am. How incredibly fascinating is that? That is so true to real life and how real relationships work. So if I betray who I am, that's going to affect me at the end of the game and ultimately going to potentially cost us our relationship. So you have to balance who you are, the type of person you are, but also the relationship as a whole. And then you're also having to look out for who they are. So you're working cooperatively, but not 100% and not all of the time. And then you're trying to learn, sometimes through the role-playing, about what they want, and also through the decisions that they make. I think it's very much focused on telling a great story. It's not the kind of game that you want to win every time, or somebody's gonna kind of learn how to be good at it. It's about that experience and what an experience it delivers. That's Fog of Love. And number 4 is A Tale of Pirates. This is a real-time cooperative game on a pirate ship. And just like Kitchen Rush, you use sand timers, but in this game it works a bit differently. You only have one, and you can only do your action once the sand has run out, which means if you take time deciding what to do once your sand timer's run out, you're wasting time where you could be using it somewhere else. And it encourages you to discuss. Whilst your sand is running down, you've got nothing else to do. And there's so much discussion to be done in this game because you really have to plan together. It's so much a cooperative, collaborative game, almost more than any cooperative game I've played, because you have to do everything in conjunction with everyone else. It's so thematic, of course. So if you want to turn west towards be pointing in another direction, you can only do that if the sail is at half mast. You can't do it if you're going sort of full steam ahead. And if you go into the crow's nest, you can look at some of the cards out there because all the cards are face down until you are pointing directly at them. And so you have to learn about what's out there because you don't want to turn into it somewhere and then hit into some rocks because that's going to damage your ship. Certain parts of your ship would be damaged and you have to repair them or otherwise you can't use them. Firing the cannons, the cannons are pointed at specific points to your left and your right. If you then move the ship, of course, they'll be pointing at something completely different and you've maybe wasted someone else's action because they were ready to fire those cannons. You have to load the cannons. It's a simple game, but it all just works so well together and it's just a lot of fun. And it's got a campaign mode to it. So the first game you play, that's an introductory game. But the second one, that's really the basics of the game. And you could play that game loads and you'd still have great fun with it because it's just a really tight real-time cooperative game. But they bring in extra content. Each mission that you complete, you've got these little plastic packs that have got cards or other things in, and they reveal extra stuff and they tell a bit of a story. So you might have to go and rescue someone or do certain things. I don't want to give too much of it away, but you are improving the game. You're adding extra mechanisms, all of them thematic and all of them a lot of fun. So generally the game gets more difficult, but then you're given more things to that help you as well at the same time. It works really nicely. This is a great game for anyone that likes cooperative games. It's a little bit easier than your average real-time game in the sense it doesn't get as hectic. And it's so communicative. I love that you can't do anything on your own. There's no quarterbacking. It's all about working as a team. And that 3D ship is awesome. And the app is really well designed as well. So yeah, really love A Tale of Pirates. And number 3 is New Angeles. This is a game that actually came out at the end of 2016, but I'm putting it here because really it was a 2017 game. And I did a review of it earlier this year, so if you want to see a more detailed rundown, then check out that. This is a negotiation game with a political theme, and it really fits its theme. You're playing as these corporations in the future that are really just exploiting this city, and you can't go too far because the people will revolt. So you have to not completely overdo it, but you're trying to make as much money as possible and more than the other players from every deal that you strike. And I really love that. It fits it so well. And it's quite a simple system, really, but it's all about the negotiation. It's a really long game because the negotiation is rich in this game. But I love that it has hidden objectives. Because rather than your average negotiation game, you have to make the most money, and then at the end, the person with the most money wins. In this game, you just have to make more money than one other person around that table. And someone else has to make more money than another player. And it gives you something to aim for, but it also means that you can actually work with people. You don't have to backstab everyone. You can kind of create alliances that actually are mutually beneficial. And then there's the traitor, the federalist, who wants to basically for it to all go wrong. They want the people to revolt. They want the government to step in and for nobody to make any money from it anymore. So they're pushing everyone to be as bad as possible, but in a hidden way, because if they give themselves away too much, everyone will just ignore them. It works so nicely. It's a wonderful, rich negotiation game that just has a few twists that make it completely different to any other negotiation game in my collection, and that's why I love it. It's got great artwork. I really hope that they do an expansion for this. I'm a bit worried. I don't think it's done as well as it should have done. If you like negotiation games on any level, you like hidden objective games or traitor games, please try New Angeles. And number 2 is New York Slice. And this is actually a reprint of a game from many years ago called Piece of Cake. I never played that game, so to me, New York Slice is new and exciting. And it's a perfect gateway game in my eyes. It's a I split, you choose game, which I haven't played many of. I really like that mechanism because the way it works is that each round you have a pizza, one person has to split it up into as many segments as there are players. And you have to decide, what are they gonna take? What do the other players want? Because you are gonna pick last. So you have to make it the segments that you give satisfying to them so that they'll take the things that you don't want. So generally, on the turn that you cut the pizza up, you're not going to necessarily do that well, but it's about playing to what they need because people are trying to collect sets of certain types of pizza. So you've got vegetarian and pepperoni and meat feast, and they score different points for how many you have of that set. You basically want to have the most of a set at the end of the game, and you'll get that many points. So there's maybe 11 pepperoni in the game. You'll get 11 points if you have the most, but it's hard to have the most because there's 11 of them, and so other people will get pepperoni. But you can also eat slices as soon as you get them for the pepperoni that are on them, and they count as points. There's also these special abilities that can be put in with one of the segments. They change the game up in really interesting ways. It's one of those games that's just got really nice decisions to it, but it's so simple. The rule book is tiny, and then the look of it, it comes in a pizza box. It looks like pizza. It makes you want to eat pizza every time you play it, and even the score pad looks like a bill. It's just I love the production of it, but really I love the game. It's so straightforward. I have been using this as one of my go-to gateway games almost immediately. So it's up there with Las Vegas and Sushi Go, games that can play in sort of half an hour, 40 minutes. For completely new people, they can get straight into it and they can really feel what a modern board game is like. I think the New York Slice is the perfect example of it. And number 1 is Magic Maze. And this is a game that I absolutely raved about in a review that I did earlier this year. It's another real-time cooperative game and another unique one that does something completely different to anything out there. The theme is that you're these fantasy heroes and you're going into a shopping mall to steal some items and then you've got to escape. The way that works is that you're revealing tiles of this maze and you're moving the adventurers through and around various obstacles. But the way that you move them, rather controlling your own hero, you control a movement. So if you play a 4-player game, I might be moving the characters north and someone else west, east, and south. And so you have to work together at every single point, because as soon as you get them, you move them one little bit, someone else has to move them in the next direction, someone else has to move them in another direction. And you can't talk throughout the game. So you're having to intuit what the other players want you to do. You're having to see signs of what can be done without saying anything. And I absolutely love that. It creates such a challenge and so much frustration. It's also playing against a timer. There's a sand timer that's running down, and you have to make sure that you flip it every 2 or 3 minutes. And you have to get one of your adventurers to a certain spot in the map to do that. And players forget about that all the time. There's so many things to keep track of. And another great thing about the game is that you can just make it harder and harder as you get better at it. So the first game, you're not going to win, but you get better and better at it. But the more you sort of have an understanding of how the game works, and you start to sort of read each other's mind a little bit, and then you can just keep adding things and adding things. There's so many different variants in the box. I've been playing with the expansion Maximum Security that came out, and that just takes it up to another level. There's so much more that you can add, and nice thematic touches. You can climb through air vents. The barbarian can bash through walls, and there's security guards that you have to move out of your way, and this big monster that is really hard to get rid of. If you think that you're good at Magic Maze, just add the expansion. It adds so much more difficulty, and it does it in a really nice way. You can play these little tutorial scenarios that teach you the game that play in like 3 minutes. Yeah, it's a really nicely done expansion. Magic Maze I've been using as a gateway game. I think it's great for newbies. I think it does something so different to other modern board games. The fact that you can't communicate, on top of it being a real-time cooperative game, just made it a game that was so refreshing to me this year, and that's why Magic Maze is my #1 game of 2017. Those are my top 20 board games of this year. I've put links to where you can get all the games in the description of this video. Check out my top 10 party games list that I'll be releasing soon. In case you were wondering, all the games in this video would get a seal of actual love. I would say that the first 10 are probably like an 8 out of 10 for me, and then the next 10 are more like a 9 out of 10. It's been another great year for board games. Thank you so much to everyone that has supported me on Patreon this year. If you'd like to pledge, go to patreon.com/actuallol. I'm John Purkis. Thanks for watching.